Welcome in to the Fun Astrology and Merriman Market Analyst Saturday Financial Podcast. I'm Thomas Miller. Thanks for joining us. Let's take a look at the markets with financial astrologer Ray Merriman. This is the free weekly newsletter that's published every weekend at MMAcycles.com. And Ray has a lot for us to think about in this episode. First of all, a couple of news stories as we do the review of this week past from the Wall Street Journal on May 8th. It says that President Trump said Thursday that his administration and the UK agreed to the outlines of a deal on trade, the first in what the White House hopes will be a series of agreements in the wake of U.S. tariffs imposed on allies and adversaries alike. It's very constructive, and we think everyone's going to be happy, Trump said. The UK says the pact is not comprehensive and will focus on reducing tariffs in specific sectors. Then this also from the Wall Street Journal on Friday. If anyone deserved a good trade deal with the U.S., it was Britain. It actually runs a trade deficit with the U.S., buys a lot of manufactured U.S. products, spends plenty on its own defense, and has a leader whom President Trump likes. And yet, the agreement announced Thursday was for Britain a bad deal, not a good deal. Its exports to the U.S. will now face a minimum tariff of 10%, up from less than 2% in 2023, with some exceptions. The U.S. is now a high-tariff protectionist country. Trade deals will be judged not by how much barriers go down, but by how much they go up. This qualifies as British victory only insofar as other countries will probably come out worse." End quote. Now, Ray's comments for the week past, he says last week was a relatively positive and mild week for stock indices, which is not unusual given that there were no major geocosmic reversal signals in effect. In fact, the geocosmic climate has been relatively benign since our 3-star geocosmic critical reversal zone, CRD, of April 21st, which coincided with a successful retest of the April 7th multi-month bottom. That could all change with the full moon as well as Sun-Uranus conjunction and Mercury-Mars square taking place next week, all from May 12th through the 17th. The prior week opened up with a case of intermarket bearish divergence in the United States as the Dow Jones Industrial Average soared to a new monthly high on May 5th, Monday, but unaccompanied by the NASDAQ or S&P. Each market pulled back to their weekly lows on Wednesday. But in the absence of any hard aspects, this bearish divergence trigger was negated as prices rallied again to new monthly highs by Thursday, with the first significant trade deal announced. This agreement happened as the moon ingressed into the safe and supportive sign of Libra, which rules agreements and partnerships. The idea to sell in May and go away in the stock market has therefore been postponed, but it could resurrect again by May 19th. The fact that the U.S. stock market has now continued higher for 4 weeks following its mini-crash, trade war-inflicted low of April 7th is a bullish indicator by itself. Usually, if the market is bearish, a rally in the middle of a primary cycle will not last more than 1 to 3 weeks. There have been exceptions to this rule, however. What it suggests is that the low of April 7th was not a half primary cycle low, but rather a 12-week contracted primary cycle. Primary cycles are usually 18 weeks plus or minus 3 weeks, sometimes plus or minus 5 weeks. So the cycle's pattern is now giving a bullish alert, which will be confirmed if prices continue to make new cycle highs after the 8th week. Until then, there remains a possibility this rally is still a bearish correction, especially since the S&P continues to struggle to exceed our bearish price objective target for a corrective rally of 5,700 to 5,750, given in our recent options webinar. In other markets, gold had a nice bounce following a $300 decline from its all-time high of $35.09 on April 22nd. That was 1 day after our 3-star critical reversal date, falling to its low of $32.09 on May 1st. It rallied back to a secondary high of $34.48 on May 7th before starting another decline down to a low so far of $32.79 on Friday, May 9th. In other words, it was an inside week for gold, which neither confirms the market is still bullish or turning bearish. In lieu of any major geocosmic signatures last week, silver was also just as non-committal as gold, trading between a high of 33.48 and a low of 32.16, well within the range of the prior week. The star of last week was Bitcoin. The weekly low was 93,383 back on Tuesday, May 6th, the same day I issued a special Bitcoin report calling for a minimum rally from 105,000 to 115,000 soon, with expectations of rising to even higher levels this year. By Friday, Bitcoin was already testing 105,000. This report is very much still valid and valuable for the timing and price targets given ahead. The report also provides 2 affordable ETFs that could benefit from the overlap of 2 cycles now underway as of April 7th to 9th. If you'd like a copy of that special report, there's a direct link in this week's newsletter at MMAcycles.com. Now, this week's short-term geocosmics from the sky. 2 articles to get us started. The first one from U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, posted on Monday in the Wall Street Journal, entitled Trump's 3 Steps to Economic Growth. Quoting the Treasury Secretary now, he says, Trump's tariffs, tax cuts, and deregulation make up a coherent strategy to benefit Main Street. Tax cuts and cost savings from deregulation raise real incomes for families and businesses. Tariffs provide income tax relief and create incentives for reindustrialization. Deregulation complements tariffs by encouraging investments in energy and manufacturing. End quote. And then this, also from Monday, from Andy Kessler in the Wall Street Journal, article entitled The Economy is in a Pickle. How do we avoid this messy doom loop, he says. It doesn't take a degree from Harvard to figure it out. 0 tariffs, a Treasury Secretary who promotes a strong dollar, cut marginal tax rates to stimulate investment, and a push for deregulation instead of tariffs, with real laws instead of executive orders. Either way, the next few months could be ugly, and how we emerge will define this era. End quote. Now, Ray's commentary for this week. He says it's been a nice ride for the U.S. and other world stock indices over the past 4 weeks, but will it continue? We may get our answer in the next week as the first hard aspects, level 1 types, are due next weekend. There are other temperamental signatures unfolding as well that can trigger either an explosive breakout to new monthly highs in several markets, stocks, gold, Bitcoin, or an intense reversal and sell-off, or both. The major geocosmic focus will be on the Sun-Uranus conjunction of May 17th in Taurus. That's the same day that Mercury in Taurus will form a somewhat rare waning square to Mars in Leo. That's quite a chaotic combination, and immediately one may speculate what it means for President Trump, who is born under the inventive but disruptive Sun-Uranus conjunction, with also a strong Mars on his ascendant in Leo. So is he going to pull a rabbit out of the hat and announce a really big trade deal? Or will he plunge the world equity markets into another rabbit hole by torpedoing a much-needed big trade deal? With the Sun-Uranus conjunction in Taurus, financial markets are likely to experience steep price moves within 4 days of next weekend. The Sun-Uranus conjunction is one of the strongest level 1 signatures we have uncovered. Whether using an orb of 10 trading days for primary or half-primary cycle culminations, or within 4 trading days where very sharp and sudden reversals have been noted in 83% of cases reported in our Volume 3 of the Stock Market Timing series. There are many cases where both a high and a low of significance have occurred during that 4-day orb. As the stock market is currently rising into this orb of time, the expectation is for a high to be followed by a sharp decline and low. As Uranus, and even Mercury, pertains to technology, the idea is that the NASDAQ and leading tech companies will be most affected. Last week, we already saw the sudden change announced in Sam Altman's OpenAI, where the plan to become a for-profit was given up in favor of remaining a non-profit entity. This was discussed in our January and February webinars in detail for this exact period of time, May. The week will start with a potent full moon in Scorpio on Monday, May 12th. This is followed by the volatile Sagittarius moon, May 13th through 15th, Tuesday through Thursday. And the week ends with the worrisome moon in Capricorn, right as we head into those powerful planetary signatures of Sun-Uranus, chaos, and Mercury-Mars on May 17th, potentially explosive incendiary rhetoric. So hold on to your seats. I don't know exactly what will happen, but I suspect all eyes will be on President Trump, who is the embodiment of these types of cosmic dynamics. My guess is the start of a new round of turbulence due to an unexpected, disturbing announcement. If I was his advisor, which clearly I'm not, for he is doing everything exactly the opposite of what I would suggest based on my understanding of planetary themes and their likely outcomes, I would advise him to chill out. Go golfing, stay away from the media, and avoid making any public statements, claims, or complaints. Now this week's longer-term thoughts. Back to the Wall Street Journal for two more articles. This one from Monday, Buffett puts Berkshire in Abel's hands. A quote here from Warren Buffett. The U.S. benefits when the world prospers. We should be looking to trade with the rest of the world, and we should do what we do best, and they should do what they do best. End quote. And then from last weekend, Peggy Noonan on May 3rd, her article entitled When Establishments Fail, Trump's 100 Days. She says, now he has had his first 100 days of his second term. They confirm what we learned in the first administration. He goes too far. He's a fearless man with bad judgment. He lacks internal calibration. I imagine him with an eager aide. On this issue, Mr. President, there are two clear choices. We can make history by moving forward 6 inches, in which case we're guaranteed to secure victory and improve America. Or we can go for 12 inches, but the opposition will be aroused and the battle long and bloody. The outcome will be uncertain. Trump looks and blinks. 12 is bigger than 6, right? Go 12. End quote, and now Ray's thoughts. He says, looking further out, we are focused on June 9 through 24, when a slew of hard planetary aspects occur, including Jupiter square both Saturn and Neptune, the most significant planetary cycles of the year. This time band also includes the ingress of Jupiter from Gemini to Cancer, Venus square Pluto, and Mars square Uranus. This is all important for 2 reasons. First, the middle of this range is Donald Trump's birthday, and hence it reflects the planetary dynamics of the year ahead for him. This is meaningful because, in his own words, he controls the U.S. and the world, and in his view of reactions to his trade policies, everyone is lining up to, quote, kiss my ass. The stated intent of his globally disruptive trade policies is to create a more morally balanced trade reciprocity between the United States and the rest of the world. Judging by the deal worked out with the UK, it doesn't seem that a fair trade reciprocity is as important as kissing my ass, which the UK has now willingly performed. Second, from the cosmic point, it is important to note that the current round of trade issues falls under the Jupiter, world, in Gemini, commerce theme. Furthermore, Jupiter in Gemini is currently transiting President Trump's natal sun sign. That 12-year high cycle ends when Jupiter moves into Cancer June 9th. It would be a very good sign if these trade deals could be completed by then, for his and our sake. He needs the European Union, India, and China, and also Japan. Can he do it by June 9th? Can he do it before Mars crosses his natal Mars on his ascendant, squared also by transiting Uranus, June 15th, one day after his birthday? And all of this is taking place just a couple of weeks before the 90-day quote-unquote grace period that he proclaimed comes due in early July. This deadline is not good timing, in my humble opinion. As I see it, this process is going to get very intense. The president will be prone to react on his basic primal impulses, which are not always in the best interest of attaining his goals, which are now also commingled with our best interests and goals, whether we like it or not. This is why I think investors and traders alike need to remain careful about becoming overconfident, just yet, about the appearance of a new bullish trend for U.S. stocks. The charts look good. They look very good. The market cycles are beginning to look positive, as if the low of the year was in as of April 7th. However, the unfolding patterns of planets in the solar system, as seen from Earth, are flashing warning signs of another impending disruption, and probably centered on the actions and reactions of the president, as well as the reactions of other world leaders to his impulses. This doesn't mean that he will fail. There are many reasons to believe he can pull this off if he just stays the course. But if instead he goes off the rails and fails, it will not be Joe Biden's fault. And that is this week's commentary. I really appreciate Ray's balance on this. He's a double Capricorn, so we need that. I've been a little bit more emotional myself with this, what seems to be an attack on the Treasury, but maybe we'll talk about that special on one of the Fun Astrology podcasts. Have a great rest of the weekend. We'll set all of this aside and just celebrate you moms. We appreciate you and love you so much, and we honor you on your special day and weekend. Thank you so much for listening to this, moms and dads, and others in between, sons and daughters. We'll see you on Monday. Full podcast next week. Bye-bye.